Food addiction is the most difficult addiction. The more raw you go, the better your performance and the better you feel. Got into fruitarian eating solely for performance, and it went great. One of my friends who I race with, who would normally beat me in like most distances, I finished ahead of him, which was a surprise to me. This guy was a great runner.
Andrew, welcome to the Urban Pharmacy podcast. I am really excited to have you here.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to be here too. A lot of the podcasts that I do, they're, for runners, based off runners. And I'm so passionate about food and nutrition. It's one of the main tools. It's actually the main tool that I use with my runners. And I'm like really happy to shift focus a little and maybe like talk less about the physiology of training and more about, health, fruit, wellness, vibrancy, things like that here with you.
And mindset.
Sure. I talk a lot about that on podcasts. So we'll
good.
Whatever direction you want to go, we'll go.
Yeah. So I want to first start this conversation with what got you into a plant-based lifestyle. I want to start there first. Yeah. And how long have you been living plant-based?
Great question. Also, by the way, this right here behind me, this is the Woodstock Fruit Festival. And this guy who happens to be on the screen, he's the founder of it. And I found the Woodstock Fruit Festival through him because he is an incredibly successful runner and ultra runner. That's how I found, if not for him, if not for this, obviously, if not for the festival, his name is Michael Arnstein.
Okay.
He's the guy who started the whole thing. And he got into fruitarian eating solely for performance. And there's a lot of reasons why people go plant-based. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's kind of where it started. It started with health. I've been plant-based 100%. I've been vegan 100% for coming up on 11 years. And I went in an instant. I was actually driving 1,000 miles in my car and I ran out of audiobooks. And this was maybe before I had Audible or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I pulled over in Washington, D.C. and went to a Barnes & Noble to get a CD audiobook. I didn't know what I was going to get. I just knew I needed something for the remainder of my drive. And I got a book by T. Colin Campbell, who's the author of the China Study. And I actually got his second book. It was called Whole, Rethinking the Modern Science of Nutrition. And I thought, the science of nutrition, let me learn a little bit more. And in that book, I made it was maybe like 11 or 12 CDs. And I made it to CD maybe 4 or 5 and decided, boom, this is for me for sure. I'm convinced. And it was about health for me when I started.
Wow.
And then the journey really began. And I don't think the people who I've met who are former vegans, former plant-based eaters, and they didn't stick with it for whatever reason, they started for health. Because if you do it for you, then you can flip-flop your mind, you can change, you can go back because it only affects you. Mm-hmm. And so it started with health for me, but then I got like really into the vegan world. And then I saw this documentary that was called Earthlings. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
And that one, you can't watch Earthlings and not go vegan. It's so powerful. It shows the ethical, at least in terms of the animals. It shows the slaughterhouses and what we think we're having if we have cage-free, free-range eggs, what that really is. And you just see, and you only need to see it once. Like, I don't watch that again. A lot of these documentaries that I've seen, I've watched them multiple times. I don't want to watch that one again. It got it into my head. I got it. So for me, the ethics trumped the health. Health was really important enough for me to go vegan, but the ethics of it made me solidify this as like, oh yeah, I'll never go back. And then it went another step further. Then I saw this documentary called Cowspiracy. Have you seen that one? Mm-hmm. Okay. And Cowspiracy talks about the environmental impact of animal agriculture. And that to me was even more important than the ethics, which was even more important than the nutrition. So I had just had like nails in the coffin all over the place and never went back. And since then, it's kind of evolved even more. I think those are the 3 reasons why people go plant-based, but maybe there's a 4th reason, and that is spiritual. Mm. And I think that you really only unlock like diet for spiritual development. It doesn't seem to make sense. Well, it does, but it really only does once you've made a bunch of steps and your diet is like really clean. And then all these other fun, cool things kind of get unlocked in the way that you think, the way that you live. And for me, it became like a spiritual journey as well. And for all those reasons, that's kind of my journey, how I got here.
Awesome. Now, you were a runner before that. You've been a runner for a long time.
Yeah, since 6th grade. I joined cross country when I was 11 years old.
So you've been a runner for a really long time. Now,
right.
You said you heard T. Colin's book and you're like, I'm going plant-based. This is happening. Now, T. Colin And if you are interested out there listening to this, there is a wonderful program through Cornell University if you want to learn some science behind, plant-based nutrition and the why and the multiple whys and learn. Now, he's not fruitarian. He's not raw. Did you go raw or did you just go plant-based?
Yeah, no way. It was not raw whatsoever. I was happy to try all the vegan stuff. So I had vegan pizzas and mac and cheese and meatball subs and ice creams. As long as it was vegan, I was doing it. I would go when I remember Earth Balance. Earth Balance is like plant-based butter. It was on sale at my local grocery store, and I just bought like 20 of them and put them in the freezer because I would use that on everything, just like oil and fat and whatever. As long as it was vegan.
Let's talk about that. Let's just talk about that. I mean, that surprises me. That surprises me because you just, typically like runners, people who are, really into their athleticism, they're not typically eating junky food. I shouldn't put people in a box, but I shouldn't put people in a box. Okay. You're like, well, I have something to say about that. That's what you're But, was that actually, like, in hindsight, was that actually more trashy, if you will? Let's just say that. Was that more of like a trashy diet than what you were eating before? Was it an upgrade because you were eating more plants, or was it kind of more processed? Like, because you really didn't know how to do it yet, maybe?
I've always been focused on health. So I didn't go from eating like clean and non-vegan to junk vegan. But I did add in the processed things like, these little like Gardein chicken strips and like Daya pizzas. I went to town on those, but it wasn't the majority of my diet. I was eating mostly raw fruits and vegetables and then cooked potatoes, rice, beans, lots of that. And then also. Got it. Right. And leading into that, I was pretty health conscious. So I thought, and you'll hear this a lot. Right. When you have a conversation with anybody about diet, which normally they bring up, not us. When they find out you're vegan, they just want to ask you everything. Right. But a lot of times people say, I eat mostly healthy, not that much red meat. I want to go vegetarian. They say things like this. And I think the belief is that when people say I eat mostly healthy, and then they list out what they have, I hear it and I'm like, that is like the most atrocious diet. But they don't think so. And that's somewhat like what I had. It was always high in fruits and vegetables, but I didn't eat processed food. I remember in high school, I had a math teacher and she would just like ask questions and you participate. And if you get something right, she has like candy and she'd like throw you the candy. And she tried to throw me like a little mini Twix or something like that. And I kind of like made fun of it. I had a big ego in high school too, when it came to running. And I said like, oh, that's bullshit. I can't eat that. And I would reject the candy. And then at the end of the year, she brought in candy for everybody else. And when I got a question, she knew I wasn't going to take the candy. And she goes, I got something for you. And she went behind her desk and she had a container of strawberries and gave me the strawberries. So even back in high school, I was like shunning the junk food for fruit, but I didn't know any better. I also ate pizza like once or twice a week. I also ate chicken and all that bullshit, but it really wasn't refined bullshit kind of foods. It was at least what a lot of people would say is healthy. And I came from that. Got it.
Okay. Yeah. So not quite the standard American diet, maybe a cleaner standard American diet.
Yeah.
And then you started eating the vegan foods amongst lots of other whole foods. So How did you feel when you made this transition? Did you have a slump of energy? Was your endurance better? Did you have more mental clarity? Did you have gut issues? What went wrong? What went right?
Yeah. It was mostly a subtle improvement. I didn't have any negative, but some of it was psychological. So when I went plant-based, this was August of 2013. I had run a couple of like 50K ultras, which is not really ultra. It's just a little more than a marathon. And I'd done like 4 of those before that and really struggled, but it was just because I was like undertrained. But I did my first 50 mile, like 3 or 4 months after going vegan. And it went great. One of my friends who I race with, who would normally beat me in like most distances, I finished ahead of him, which was a surprise to me. This guy was a great runner. So mostly improvements. I'll tell you the one benefit that I noticed was, we're going to get a little graphic here. Yeah. We're talking about bathroom stuff.
I was I knew it intuitively. I was like, I know what you're going to say. Okay.
Yeah. I move my bowels quite a lot, like more times than most people, like more than 6 times per day, like definitely. And it was like that before I was vegan. It was like a high number, but I remember after like maybe a week or 2 of going vegan, I released something that was black. And I just remember it. I didn't feel better. I didn't anything. It was just different from any movement I'd had in previous to my life. I'm like, what the heck was that? It only happened once, or maybe for like a day or 2. It was like a small period of time, and just like stuff came out of me.
Wow.
And I didn't notice that I like had this big relief or anything like that. I just noticed that symptom. And then my running really just got better from there. But for the next like 5 years, so I've been plant-based for 11 years, maybe for 5 or 6 of those years, I was eating in this way, vegan chicken and pizzas and stuff like that, in addition to the other stuff. And my performance got better, but I was training better. Mm-hmm. And it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago that I went whole food plant-based for the most part. I still had some of those things. And to this day, sometimes I'll have like vegan ice cream or something.
And sometimes you'll have bagels at Christmas, like you told.
That's right. Yeah.
And bagels aren't bad. I mean,
they're still vegan, right?
Right.
But and recently I even switched. When I would go home, we have bagels at this wonderful place called Bagel Alley in
that's what I mean. Like the white flour bagels, right?
Yeah. So I still had those even this past year, but instead of having it with like vegan cream cheese, I bring oil-free hummus and vegetables. So I eat the bread, but it's still trending towards better. I do it for a finite period of time, and then I stop eating bagels for mostly a year,
And why no oil for Andrew?
Caldwell Esselstyn turned me onto this.
I just got done interviewing him a few days ago.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so amazing. I want to hear that. Are you aware of what he says about oil?
Oh yeah. It damages the endothelial lining.
Absolutely. And I became convinced of that. I just watched, I went through a phase with all of these plant-based teachers. I've binged all of them multiple times. So I watched everything that he has. And I remember he has this video where he stands on stage and he moves away from the microphone and he goes up to the edge of the stage and he puts his hands around his mouth and he goes, no oil. And then he waits a second and he goes, no oil. And he just yells it for some extended period of time to try to drive it into your brain. And it drove it into my brain. I'm like, oh yes, no oil. And then here's an hour and a half of why no oil. And damages the endothelial cells and it paralyzes your arteries because it inhibits nitric oxide. Oil and caffeine, especially caffeine in coffee, inhibit nitric oxide, paralyze the arteries. And that's not good for life, but it's not good for running. If you're running, you want to deliver more blood to your working muscles. And if your arteries are paralyzed, you can't do that. And then for your recovery, you want to deliver more blood. So I just decided oil was not good. It's highly oxidizing. It's rancid. So I dug deeper and I found that there's a bunch of research done on going to the store and selecting all the different kinds of oils and then testing them for like, are they rancid or not? And they all are. You got like T minus whatever it is, a couple of weeks or so after you cold press oil for it to, I might eat like freshly cold pressed oil. I might do that.
Right. Yeah.
But oil from a bottle, it's rancid anyway. So just, not for me. And I don't even think it tastes good. Like what's oil good for?
Right.
For frying something. Yeah. But I don't want to have fried stuff. So aside from like deep frying, what other use is oil for? Like dressing or something? I don't even think it tastes good. So yeah,
there's so many other ways to make dressings with.
Right. And oil sneaks into everything. So I'll use organic oat milk. I still use, even when I'm raw, I'll still have oat milk in like a tea or something, but I get oil-free oat milk because otherwise, if you get those plant milks.
I didn't even know they made oil-free oat milks. I haven't looked at the labels of those for so long because I just don't even do it.
Yeah, I do.
But
Califia Farms organic oat milk is oil-free.
Yeah. That's great. That's great to know.
That's the one that I use.
That's awesome.
And a small amount.
So going back to the hummus, well, hold on. Well,
okay.
You're right with the oil. Like there's a lot of controversy in the nutrition world, even in the plant-based nutrition world in regards to oil. And I will just say, like Dr. Joel Kahn has been on my podcast twice. And the first episode, no oil. That was his stance. Then a new study came out and he came on, and the way that the way that he started the podcast was, I want to talk about oil. And he wanted to talk about like the benefits of olive oil. And it was very fascinating. But you know what? What makes it potentially beneficial is this like constituent called alloropin or hydroxytyrosol, which is really, it's great if you get like a really high quality olive oil, but it's just so much higher in the olive leaf. So if anybody wants that benefit, just drink olive leaf ground up. Like just just so people know that's a fun fact. And you can go down the PubMed hydroxytyrosol wormhole if you want to do that. So,
whoa.
Did you know that?
That's news to me. I had no idea. Where do you get olive leaf?
It's news to me because that aligns with the new like holistic beauty brand that I'm with. It's called Oliveda, and it's all based on the olive tree. So of course, like if you're watching this on YouTube, they have this olive oil that, truth be told, I've only used for an enema, which I know might sound really weird, but that's an
oil enema. Never heard of that.
Yeah, I know. That's how the founder, that's one of the things that he did to heal himself from literally dying in bed. So anyway, maybe I'll do a whole podcast on that someday. But yeah, I found out about olorapin and hydroxytyrosol, which are what all the studies out there show make olive oil beneficial. Okay. So and it can be up to 3,000 times higher in the leaf. So it's just like, why put the highest caloric density food in your mouth, especially when we're living in this, this world that's the majority of people are overweight and obese, and just use the leaf ground up and drink it like a matcha. That's what I've been doing. And I'm feeling better, and it's just amazing. So people should know that they can buy, I mean, if they start to look at it, there's capsules of olive leaf everywhere. Like you can buy them, in the supplement section. And it's used for all these different things, antiviral, lowering cholesterol. And that's why people are saying olive oil is so good for cholesterol. It's really because of this polyphenol called hydroxytyrosol. So we're going back to the hummus. I want you to can you share a tip? Because I personally haven't found any oil-free hummuses in my area. That's thanks, Indiana. I just live in a lame area. So I make all of my own hummus, and I just soak, multiple bags of beans, and I will make like tons of hummus at one time. And I use my tip to make a nice creamy hummus is to use cold water while I'm blending it. Is that a tip that you guys use to do like a creamy texture for homemade?
Yeah, for sure. That's a good one. Absolutely. I found that the biggest shift when making hummus, especially if you're not using oil, which does make it like creamier, is it makes it labor intensive, but you got to remove the skins.
Oh yeah, I can't do it. That's so true.
I just buy
I've done it like one time, and it makes massive difference.
Takes forever, but if you want it creamy and oil free, that's how you do it.
Right. I guess like you could just put the beans on a tea towel and then put another tea towel on top and rub on the top of it, and that will take the skins off a little easier. But that's I forgot about that one. You're very right. Like that I did a long time ago, and that made a huge difference. But
I would rather save the hour of time doing that and just have a slightly grittier hummus.
Oh, same.
If I'm going to make it for like a party or something like that, I would do it. But just for myself,
fancy. Yeah,
I won't bother, or I'll just buy it. Or won't have it. Just make like a raw dressing or something.
Right. Or you can make like a cheater version, which is what I used to do. Like when I didn't care about oil, I would just I would make a little homemade, and then I would buy some and I would put them together.
Oh yeah, that's cheating for sure, but it works.
It's a hybrid. Cheat.
Anything that makes life easier, totally.
Semi homemade. Okay, yep. So are you living fully raw right now after Woodstock?
Nope. Are you mostly raw?
Mostly raw. Okay.
Mostly raw, and I have.
And why? Why?
Yes, some of my days are. Why am I not fully raw right now?
Why are you fully raw? I mean, why are you mostly raw right now versus just whole food plant-based?
Oh, okay. Raw is way so much better. For the more raw you go, the better your performance and the better you feel, provided a couple of things. Okay. If you just have like more raw fruit, but you stack it on top of cooked food. So if you're having like fruit for dessert following potatoes and whatever, I guess, hey, whatever gets the fruit in, but your digestion is not going to be as good. You're going to ferment some of that sugar. It's just going to go through you more slowly. Yeah. So I kind of follow a little more closely, like raw till 4. Okay. Breakfast is always just raw fruit. Today I had nothing until 12:30, but then I had an entire watermelon right before getting on this call. And then
like a mini watermelon, or
it was
like
one of the ones from the Woodstock Fruit Festival. I took back 6 and I had just my last one. So it wasn't like a personal watermelon, but it wasn't a giant one. It was like that big.
Yeah.
So good watermelon, but that's just because it's what I have. In the summer, I'll eat an entire watermelon basically every day. I love watermelon. Love it.
And you're not just juicing it, you're eating it.
Yeah, I juice it too, but mostly eat it. Interesting thing with watermelon juice is that my best times in running, my best times in the 50K, the 50 mile, the 100 mile, and my 2 best times in the 12-hour, all of those I did on completely either just watermelon juice or watermelon and citrus juice. That's it. Like during the race, leading up to the race and during the race, that's all I have. I've got some YouTube videos on this as well. I've got one from April 2023 where I set a course record on a 12-hour course, and I just had watermelon juice, and that was it. So I will juice for a race, but I'll eat the watermelon in my life. And
what about beet? Do you ever put beet juice? I mean, are you a beet juice person with this nitric oxide situation?
Yeah. But I use that like more sparingly. I'm not going to have 2 gallons of beet juice. That just doesn't sound appetizing. Yeah. I'll have a little bit, but I can have 2 gallons of watermelon juice for sure.
Wow. Yeah. Fascinating. Okay. So you feel better. And so it sounds like you do food, not maybe food combining so much, but you do a specific order. So let's kind of break down what currently like a typical day would look like for Andrew as a daily runner, sometimes twice a day runner.
Yeah.
And do you have a calorie? Do you know how many calories you consume on a daily basis on average?
I used to track that, and I like loosely track it just to make sure I'm not under eating. Right. And I have an issue with this. I get to the end of the day and I think about what I ate and I'm like, oh, I've only had 1,500 calories, but I ran 15, 20, 30 miles today. It's like, I need more. And I'm just kind of like chasing calories. So I just think about it as a way to make sure I'm kind of getting enough. But beyond that, it's kind of an afterthought. As long as I'm full, what else are you going to do? If I'm full, am I going to like eat more just to get the calories? No, I'm satiated. If I get hungry again, but I do try to like stuff myself a little bit extra up until like 7 o'clock or so. And then if I missed it, I'll just sip on some tea. I forget what the original part of your question was.
The original question was, what is a normal day of eating like for you?
I'll wake up and have a hot beverage, and that's tea, or I like herbal coffee.
Which one?
So that's,
sorry,
I use all different kinds. I got into herbal coffee with Cafix. Which is like that
brand.
It's good. It's not the best. I don't get it anymore. Right now I could look it up. I wish I had it here. I just ran out. So I just ordered. Tea-Chino's good. Yeah, but it's got carob in it too, which I like, but it's not my favorite. So I just ordered 3 Tea-Chinos. And there's one that I have that's like it's a powdered rooibos tea that then has like a bunch of herbs in it, and it's delicious. So I do that with either on its own, just with water, or a little bit of oil-free oat milk. Maybe not the best way to start the day, but I like it, whatever.
Hey, no, yeah.
So I have that. And then I eat just raw fruits and mostly until dinner. And it's mostly bananas and watermelon because I love them. They're easy. But like bananas are just so easy to just like peel 3 at a time, throw them in the blender. And I mostly don't eat my bananas. I smoothie them. Mm-hmm. Texture is way better. And watermelon, cut it in half. I don't chop it up into chunks. I just slice it down the middle, eat it with a spoon, and I'll walk around. I'll go for a walk or go for a hike with a friend, just carrying half a watermelon like this with a spoon. And then when I finish it, I just toss it into the woods. And pretty simple, watermelon and bananas. Of course, there's different fruits that I have. I'll make juice very often, green juice. I've done 10 days on only juice. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes there's a juice in there, but it's mostly bananas, watermelon, maybe a green juice. And then dinner is normally a massive salad, and we're talking massive. I know you get it, what a massive salad is, but so it's like 3 or 4 entire heads of romaine lettuce, a couple tomatoes, maybe some avocado, and various dressings. I use oil-free hummus as a dressing because it's delicious and it's so easy.
Oh my God, it's so good. Yeah.
And recently I just made a raw sprouted walnut dressing, and you don't even need recipes for this. Just like you can just make it up. But I'll do nut or hemp seed dressings sometimes. I try to keep the fat low, but hey, it feels good. It's satiating. So I don't fear it at all. Yeah. So evening is like a giant salad. And then sometimes dessert. And dessert is sometimes raw. I get these like raw date nut things. But honestly, even though they're raw, I feel pretty heavy. And I feel better if I eat something cooked high carbohydrate rather than like high fat raw.
Same.
So I will have like a vegan cookie or vegan ice cream or something like that from time to time, like semi-regularly. Mm-hmm. And I'm fine with it. I feel good. Not too much. So it's like raw plus junk.
No, it does not sound like junk. Like, sometimes you have a vegan cookie, who cares? But like, I mean, I saw what your salads look like
or 5 cookies. Sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so now he's telling us the hidden secrets. Okay.
Sometimes.
So see, I was just going to say, I'm so proud of you that you can just have one cookie. I was literally going to say that.
No, I can't.
See, that's why me, as somebody who, after listening to Chef AJ, Dr. Goldhammer, Dr. Doug Lyle, not sure if you know any of those three. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. After learning all about food addiction and what happens to the brain after you eat specific foods, mainly flour, salt, oil, sugar, alcohol, caffeine. And when I learned all about that, I was like, wow, I'm just going to stop adding oil. I'm going to stop adding salt. I'm going to stop adding sugar, and then I'm also going to try to reduce my flour. And we have our son, and I try to make cookies that are just, they're not groats, they're not oat groats. Like ideally, in an ideal world, if I were to make him a cookie, it would be a sprouted whole oat groat. But that's not what's happening. We're buying the organic sprouted rolled oats. And even those can be like just straight, it can feel like you're eating sugar almost. But if you were to give me a vegan cookie these days, if I were to eat like the vegan cookies that I used to eat, even from the really healthy, crunchy hippie store, I would eat one and then I would probably go back a day or two later and be like, I just need another one. And then, then I would be finding myself trying to find them online for wholesale pricing, like it's just like I get caught in these traps. So anyways, you're an ultra marathon runner. You're not going to be, it can, there's different things going on biologically with you and I, but, so you could afford to have those cookies and it won't be detrimental to your energy levels or, maybe you're not triggered the same way that I am, but.
Nope, I am. Food addiction is so real. I've come to conclude that food addiction is the most difficult addiction of
so hard. Yeah.
Anything I've ever dealt with. You can imagine like what are the dopamine things that we get addicted to, and food is by far, because I've been able to kick like any other addiction, and the food addiction, it like calls you back. And exactly as you said, when you give yourself license to have a little bit, it inevitably, good luck, it just turns into more and more and more. And then you're, like you said, buying wholesale and then making exceptions and going back. If you make that one exception to go. So one of the things that I find to be like delicious and hyper addictive is Panda Express. They have a chow mein.
Oh, don't even.
It's vegan, but it's also relatively high carb. When I first was doing the research on it to find out if it's vegan or not, it's like, there's very little oil in it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm like, oh, it's high carb and it's vegan, whatever. If I'm like in a pinch and I want it. So if I ever get one of those, like T-3 days until I'm back there.
Salt. It's the salt.
Yeah.
Like, well, let's talk about how, Chef AJ says, and multiple of these doctors that study this food addiction, like Joan Ifland and other people, it's like telling an alcoholic to just have a drink. Just one drink, just one drink. It's just one drink. Like, right? Somebody who's maybe been sober for years, like it's the same type of thing. And so many people don't understand, people like you do understand that it's just sometimes if you say yes, it just will send you into this terrible spiral, which is not fun. And then also there's been studies showing that like with white rice or with whole grains or any food, if you add salt, it will actually, you can eat twice as much. So super interesting. And I think people need to know more about the SOS free lifestyle. And then if they want to take it further, SOS free plus caffeine, flour, and alcohol reduction. So you are eating some fats, you're eating high fruit, you're hydrating a ton. Are you doing and you're having some adaptogens in the morning. The rooibos is adaptogenic. Are you supplementing or are you doing any other biohacks like sauna? Are you doing cold therapy? Are you taking anything to give you an edge? Where are you at with that?
Currently, no, but in general, over the course of a year, yes, I do cold plunges from normally starting around my birthday, which is in March, through Halloween. That whole part of the year, I get in cold water essentially every single day. It's part of my morning routine, and I get in natural cold water. In the winter, I'll do it sometimes, but I don't mind getting in the cold water as long as when I get out, it's like sunny and warm. So when I get out and it's like cold and windy, I just don't feel motivated. But I do cold plunges. Yes, a lot. I do sauna. I did a sauna every day leading up to my last 100-mile race because that was in Phoenix in the desert, like exposed to the sun. And I thought I needed to for training. I don't know if it helped me or not. Probably because when I ran that race in the desert, I was fine. No heat problems at all. It's not part of my life right now. I used it as a tool. So cold plunge, sauna. And then for supplements, I do supplement, but I supplement with food. I actually have it. I could go grab it, like the things that I have. I do take a B12 as cyanocobalamin, as recommended by Michael Greger. Mm-hmm. And I don't take it regularly. It's whenever I remember. It lasts me forever because it takes you forever to run out of B12. So I figure if I'm supplementing just whenever I remember, it's fine. Right. I do take that. And I do take there's a sponsorship item that I got. I give people for my channel. I have companies that send me nutrition stuff and whatever. And I don't accept anything. I'm like, I'm not going to promo this unless I think it's the best. Right. So there's only one thing that I haven't even made a video for, but there's only one item I've ever received that I'm actually going to recommend on my channel because it's raw. There's this powder that this company sent me and I grilled them on. I'm like, don't send it to me if it has like I want to see the ingredients. And if it's not raw, like I can't promote it. And it is. And the first ingredient is beets and they're low temperature dehydrated beets. And then they have like cherry in there and it's all like fruits and there's like strawberry, blueberry, not freeze dried. It's just like low temperature dehydrated blended. When you open it up, it's like chunky. It's not like a fine powder. So I do have that. Mostly because they sent it to me for free, but also it's a good way to get in, just like cover the spectrum with a little bit more concentration of fruits, especially beets. Right. I do have beet powder as well. And if I ever have like my hot herbal beverage in the morning, like today, I did that and I put a scoop of beet powder in there. Yep. So B12, beet powder, and I do take intermittently, I do take NMN, which is a precursor to NAD+, which is a whole conversation that we could have. I read, are you a fan of Tony Robbins at all? Mm-hmm. So in his second most recent, he had a book that came out today that I just started, but in the most recent book called Life Force, there's a couple chapters in there on NAD+ and how to supplement in order to make more NAD+. And I just figured it wasn't going to hurt me. I think in the absence of an ideal diet that everybody over 50 would do well to supplement with a great diet. I don't know. Right. But I do supplement with that normally in like the month leading up to a big race. And then otherwise, no. And that's it.
Got it.
Yeah, that's it.
Andrew, when did you decide that you wanted to write a book? And when did you decide that you wanted to start helping people with their running?
I'll do the book one first because that one, I'm just like lit up by it. My book's right here behind me. It's called Run Elite, Training to Think Like the Greatest Runners of All Time. And during the 90-day launch period, it was #1 on track and field and running on Amazon. So I'm very proud of it. That took 3 years to write. About 10 years ago, I decided I wanted to run a book and I started. I'm glad I didn't finish it then because I didn't have the knowledge that I have now, but it was an idea. And then it was like maybe 2020 during the lockdown, business was like kind of stale during that whole lockdown thing. So I just like shut off my calendar and decided during lockdown, I'm going to write a book. And I started and I thought I could do it in maybe like 2 or 3 months. And no. It took 3 years of almost full-time work for 3 years, plus 5 editors and a fact checker and a formatter and cover design and marketing and, Lordy, 3 years, and cost a lot of money and a lot of time, but it was so worth it because I decided that whether it sells or not, this is a passion project that I want for contribution and to just feel good. So I did. And then it turns out it's selling incredibly well and it drives my entire business right now. Wow. I sell like many copies every single day. There's an audiobook as well. And people find me on YouTube, normally binge my YouTube, then get my book, read my book, and then reach out to me for coaching. And at this point, it just helped my business so much because now people who I get on the phone with, they already know who I am. And maybe they've been following my content for a year or two, and they've read my book too. It's not like a cold funnel where you're running like an ad. I did that for years and it's so much better like this. Yeah. So that's the book. And deciding I wanted to help people, I took it seriously. I was like a low level coach, just like working with local people as like a hobby, basically for years and years. But it was really when I went to my first Tony Robbins event in 2018, 18, I think it was 2018 in March. I went to Unleash the Power Within. I've been to all of his events since.
Did you walk on the pole?
I've done that 3 times.
Okay.
I've been to 3 UPWs. I've also done Business Mastery, Date with Destiny, all of the audio programs, I've done them all. But the first UPW I went to, Tony said something that really, really, really stuck with me. Lots of things stuck with me. It changed my life. But he's talking about the difference between good to great is a giant leap. To get great at something, it's a lot. But to go from great to truly outstanding, he talks about it being like the 2 millimeters. It's just a little bit more. And I decided for myself that the job that I had at that time was the best job I ever had. I was a sales rep. I had 10 different brands and I covered 5 states. And I made like 3 times the money I'd ever made. I was mostly my own boss. I got to work from home half the time and then travel half the time. I was good at it. I was passionate. It was fun. And I realized that job, if I did that till the end of my life, how am I going to feel? And I'm like, well, I'll have a pretty good life. I'll pay the bills and then some. I'll vacation sometimes. But I felt like it's not going to be an outstanding life. It'll be a very good life. And I decided that I would rather risk everything and at least in my 30s be outstanding. And if it fails, I can live with myself. If I lose my house and everything, it's like, that would suck, but at least I could die knowing that I did it. And I just decided that that's what I wanted to do. So I quit that job. My income went to 0 and it stayed at 0 for a long time. And you can't do, no man or woman or person is an island. So I hired a business coach and I hired a mindset coach and I hired I just maxed out all my credit cards, no income, lots of debt. I'm doing this. I didn't pick up a second job. I just stuck with it. 6 months, no income for 6 months. And I was starting to worry.
Yeah.
But I just kept going, had to stick it out. It took a long time to build momentum. It took 5 years to get where I am now. And thank God I stuck it out, because for me, that was the only way to do it. If I had a crutch by getting like a part-time job, it wouldn't have worked. Not for me.
Right.
I needed to have the fire under my butt. So when it came to helping people, it started 2018 at Tony Robbins' event. I want to live my life not through certainty and significance. I want to live my life through growth and contribution and love. And so I'm like, contribution and grow myself, learn how to be a business owner, learn how to help people, learn how, like the psychology of how to help them, learn how to get my message out there through the science that I already know. And it's just like a better life. And I decided that's what I'm going for. And if it blew up, I didn't believe that it could blow up because, burn the ships. You've heard that. So there's a story. It turns out it's not a true story, but when Cortez came over to the Americas to seize the land, apparently his men made it up onto the shore. He told them to burn their boats. Mm-hmm. This didn't really happen, but why burn the boats? Because if you burn your boats, you have no option to retreat. You're going to die or you're going to win. That's it. And that mindset of do it or die with no plan B, with no lifeline, you cut it off. You burn your boat. You're not going back to Europe. You better win or you'll die.
Right.
And so I burned the ships. I quit the job. I didn't pick up a life raft with a part-time job because I had to. Someone else might be able to be less extreme with it, but not me, because I would have copped out if I had the ability to.
Well, I mean, you're not an extreme person at all, Andrew. I mean, you're not extreme at all. Not at all. Okay. So I want to talk. So obviously you have a rock solid mindset, but guess what? You invested in it, right? You worked so hard. You've worked and put so much energy, effort, intention into having a solid mindset that's going to, change your life. And it did. And you decided to step into what is going to be the most impactful for your life and impactful for other people's lives. And how do you feel like your past and your practice and your running kind of got you to taking this step into your life and manifesting the life that you have right now? Do you think that because of your sport, that you are the type of person that you are now?
I don't know. My ego wants to say yes, but I don't actually believe it, because if I just let my ego talk here, and I'll let my ego talk for a second, it's running has taught me consistency and how to push through. And when things get hard, I ran a 205-mile race in the mountains at altitude. It took 98 flipping hours of continuous running. There were ups and downs. The downs were massive. And I I have a video on this as well called like overcoming the impossible at the Tahoe 200. And I like overcame this massive setback. I should not have been able to finish this race. I couldn't walk. I couldn't put weight on my foot for 6 hours and somehow ran another 100 miles. And when I think about that, it's like my ego wants to say, well, if I can do that, I can do anything. And you find runners say this. I run ultras to show myself like I can do hard things. And so when I come back to my business, it's like you kind of care less. And maybe that's true. Maybe I don't know because I've been a runner my entire life. Maybe it's just a standard that I have, but I can easily become a dopamine addict, be lazy, neglect something that's important. I can easily do that. Even though I run every single day. I never take a day off. I run every day. And it's like, that teaches me discipline. Not really. I love running. I would neglect things that are important in my life to go run. So is it teaching me discipline? Because I'm neglecting the thing I need to do. I have to reply to all these emails. Not now, going for a run. Is that discipline? I don't know. So I would not say that running like made me who I am. I think that my beliefs, which I've consciously chosen, and I do this once a year, I take myself on a personal retreat and I set up my whole year and I go through my values, towards values, away values, what my beliefs are. My beliefs change and I have some like guiding beliefs, and being like self-selecting those is really what changed my life. And for me, it started like 15 years ago. I feel like I was like born into a new era of life. I read The Power of Now, and that was like the first self-development book I ever read. I read other science books and whatever, but that one just kind of started to change how I view life. And then I took it from there. I went all sorts of different directions, and I'm an avid reader now. And so just like growing and expanding mostly with what you believe, like my beliefs about what this life is and the universe and why I'm here, and like my relationship with God and myself and other people and what love is. For me, I have these things figured out because I've done like deliberate work on them. For me, they're figured out. And that really makes it easy for me to make a decision about what to do or how to respond to something. Like one of the most powerful beliefs I have a couple that always come back like daily. One of them is that everything is always working out for me. Mm. And I really believe that. Really, like if I trip and fall on the trail and smash myself and cut myself up, it may have taken some time for me to like condition myself for this, but it's so conditioned now that I'm grateful that I fell and smashed my face, even if it hurts. It sounds crazy, but I instantly think, thank God, because I don't know why that happened, but maybe had I not, I'd have made it down the trail a minute earlier and I would have been shot or a bear would have got me, whatever it is. Right. And you'll never know, but I just believe that it's always working out for me no matter what. And I don't need the evidence. I've had enough evidence, because when we look retroactively in our life, when something happens like a breakup or a loss of a job, and if enough time passes, we can also often see, thank God that happened because it led me to this. So that's just faith that when it happens now, before you can see it in retrospect, it's happened a million times before in my life or 100 times before. Why would it be different this time? Mm-hmm. I just decide. So my beliefs govern kind of like how I live now. That's what made the change for me.
So inspiring. Oh my gosh, Andrew, where can we find you? Like, how do we follow you? How do people get into your ecosystem?
Best way is on YouTube. I publish there every week. My channel is called Run Elite.
Awesome. Awesome. So
and a lot of times when people hear that, I say it Run Elite. And like half of the people, they say Run You Eat. I'm like, no. Run Elite.
Run Elite. Okay. Right. Just like your book.
Just like the book. Yeah.
Just like your book. Okay. So I have one more question.
Okay.
And before we wrap this up, I feel like we might have to have another episode because I feel like we could talk
forever
a
on
lot of things. Yeah.
Nutrition. And yeah.
What does holistic living mean to you?
I'm going to take a second to process.
Yeah, you're fine.
Think about that. Yeah. My brain's going to all different ways, but I want to give you what I actually think. Okay. It's going to be different for everybody based off of what they believe they are, who they believe they are. So do you identify with your life, like your body and your mind? If you do, a holistic life is going to be different than someone who identifies with their spirit or their soul, which is going to be different from someone who identifies that all is one. We are all one. And you might even believe that all of those are true, but which one you're focusing on will determine what you think a holistic life is. For me, I identify with all of those, but I most closely identify with like the journey of the soul, that I'm here to learn and grow. Earth is a school. And for that reason, there's one thing, like for me, when I leave this life, what are you going to take with you? You're going to take with you who you became. And for me, it's the relationships that you had. So contribution is a big one, but how are you contributing? Because you planted a tree, maybe, but that's a relationship with the tree. And that's a relationship with your fellow, you're planting the tree for the earth and for the people. So a holistic life for me has a foundation, like a core of who you're becoming. When you get to the end of your life, do you love who you've become? How you treated people? Were you honest and truthful? And that one is a slippery slope. Being honest doesn't mean that you're not overtly lying, because most people, most of the time, aren't overtly lying. I guess sometimes, but just being honest. Bruce Lee said this. He said that to know yourself honestly is very hard to do. And the journey of knowing yourself honestly, because like, for example, sometimes we want validation or social whatever. So we might act in a way that we don't go to a party that we don't want to go to because it's expected of us. That's a form of lying. It's not being in alignment with yourself. And so to like strip away and be honest with yourself in order to have the most love that you can contribute, love for your creator, love for yourself, love for others. I think if we do that at the end of our life, we've lived a good life, regardless of what we achieved, the external things. And with running, I talk about this with my clients. It's not the time on the clock. You want to become the kind of person who naturally has the time on the clock, but doesn't need the time. You just love who you became. And then kind of who cares if you had the time? That's a real short, simplified version of saying it. But for me, that's what a holistic life is. And so that if that infiltrates everything else, that means it's holistic. So for me to have that kind of life that I want, well, I have values that align with that kind of life. One of my top values, normally my number one, but certainly one or two value, depending on the year, is health. I believe that if my health is outstanding, my body health, my mental health, my spiritual health, then I have more to contribute. I have more to love. I'm less irritable. I'm more patient. I have more energy to go do social things. I'll be around longer to have more experience with people. It's like without your health, the body is the temple, right? So holistic life is also having knowing what your values need to be in order to fulfill that life. For me, health is number one. Love is number two. I have a list of like 12 or so, but those are 1 and 2. And that's going to all be different for everybody, but that's for me what it is. Was that too long-winded or ethereal or concise?
There's no right or wrong. That's that's the beauty of that question, because it means something different to everyone. And I knew you would have a very insightful answer. And I feel like a lot of the things that you say are so full of wisdom. And I think it's a direct reflection of all of the work that you've done personally on yourself. And that just radiates out to everybody that you touch. And it's just an awesome, beautiful thing. So Andrew, do you have any final thoughts or anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
Actually, I do. Something just happened 2 nights ago in a world that's very relevant for me in the runner's world. And so I'm going to just share that. It's a little bit off topic from what we shared here, but it's very relevant in the world right now. There's a runner named Kelvin Kiptum. And this guy came onto the stage very recently. He's very young. He's 24 years old. Last year was his debut marathon, and he ran the second fastest marathon ever. His next marathon, his only second marathon, broke the world record, which was like untouchable. And he did it. This guy, and he's got the Olympics coming up, and he's going to be the first human to break 2 hours in the marathon in a non-controlled environment. This guy on top of the world, fastest runner who's ever lived in the marathon. And 2 nights ago, car accident, died. Leading into the Olympics, before he got a chance to break the 2 hours, in the greatest showdown of all time in distance running, Eliud Kipchoge versus Kelvin Kiptum at the Olympics. It's going to be the greatest showdown that's ever existed in distance running. Died at age 24. So when I found that out, I kind of absorbed it for like 15 minutes. And then I'm like, I want to talk to my audience about this. I went live on YouTube, and then I didn't talk about his life. I didn't try to memorialize him. I just shared what I felt we can learn from this. And I said, how can we honor this man? And my suggestion was we can learn a couple amazing lessons from a tragedy like that. And one of them is that now is the time.
Yep.
You never know. His time for the Olympics never came. He never went to the Olympics. Now is the time. You never know when we're done. And like kicking the can down the road, if you want to do something, we hear this all the time. It almost floats in one ear, out the other. Now's the time. But really, it is. That's lesson number one. I think that I'm taking away from that tragedy. I don't view it as a tragedy because love and growth for the world comes out of it. What a beautiful thing. But tragedy, a young man at his peak died. And second is that the goal is not, the outcome is not the goal. If his outcome was Olympic gold medal and break 2 hours, well, guess what? He never did it. So does that mean his life was a failure? No, he's like the biggest inspiration in the running world right now. And he never did those things, never even made it to the starting line of those races. That's absolute proof that the outcome is not the goal. So like the outcome if you're trying to improve your health or your relationships or your contribution or your finances, the thing you want to get is not the goal. And we resist that so much because easy for you to say, yeah, sure. Yeah. But everybody will say that. It really is not. And I'm reminded of Esther Hicks, who says, I love quoting her, the only reason we do anything is because of the way we think we'll feel when we do it. Your job is to not get the booty. It's not to like get the outcome. It's who you become on the way. Because Kelvin Kiptum, boom, died. What a failure it would have been if the outcome was the time on the clock or the gold medal, as opposed to who he became. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good lesson. So I do want to leave with that. Sort of a tragedy in the world, in the running world right now, but a beautiful thing if we make it beautiful and see it for what it can be as well.
So powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I really, that is a tragedy, but it's also beautiful at the same time. So thank you so much, Andrew. So good. I appreciate you, friend. I'm so glad that we aligned, that we connected, that we know each other. And I know so many people will be inspired from your message today. So I just am so grateful, and we will talk soon.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much. If you're one of our readers who's got the book and left us an awesome review, but if you haven't yet, go ahead and pick up your copy, Run Elite. It's on Amazon right now. It's on Audible right now. Train and think like the greatest runners of all time. If it weren't for you guys, we wouldn't have even made this. So take care, and thank you for making it a success.